G'day, Ben from Duck Playing Chicken here with the final video in the build series of the Wave 1/100 VF-1S Super Valkyrie fighter Roy Focker. All the pieces have now had a gloss coat, so I've just used SMS clear gloss for that, and now it's time for the panel lining. So when I do panel lining, any of you have watched my videos before, you'll know I use a combination of different sort of enamels for my panel lining process. So I'm going to use 3 different colors essentially for the different types of parts. So for the white parts, I'll be using a heavily diluted version of XF63. So I use Tamiya enamel thinner to thin this stuff right down, and then I sort of put it in a just to mix it up in a little bottle, but you can sort of see in there how thin it is. The thinner it is, there's kind of a fine balance. The thinner it is, the more it'll flow in your panel lines using capillary action. But if you make it too thin, what you'll end up with is the pigment sort of separating out a bit. So just be careful of that. It takes a bit of experimentation. So I can't give you sort of actual ratios of, but it's literally just a dab of the enamel paint and about that much sort of enamel thinner. So it's quite heavily diluted. So that's for all the white parts. I'll be using that. For the booster packs, for this sort of blue color, I'll be using a mix of XF50, which is filled blue, and flat black to darken it up. So, and you can see, it's quite dark blue. I mean, if you want to use black, it's not going to make much of a difference, but I just prefer to try and keep close to the base color a little bit. For the grey pieces and also the metallic pieces, I'll just be using Pentaline Accent Colour Black. So that's the products I'm going to be using. So the next step is about how I apply it. The application of this stuff is really quite straightforward. Just take a small cup, and I'll start with the white pieces. So I'll start with my grey. Give the stuff a really good shake. You don't want it to separate out, because that's what enamel paints do, especially when they're thinned down a lot. They'll all the pigment will sort of settle in the bottom. Okay, so a little bit of this into cup. And I'll take a reasonably sized brush. This is a number 4, just so it can hold a lot of the panel lining enamel in it. And I use odorless thinners. So this is stuff you can get at sort of an art supplies place for oil paint, which enamels are sometimes referred to as. So this stuff's the odorless stuff, which is really good. Doesn't sort of get right up your nose. And what I'll do is I'll just have a little cup of it. I'll wet my brush in it first, also used for cleaning, and then I will load up my brush, and we simply just dab it to the panel lines. And you'll see as soon as you do that, the capillary action the paint just travels along and leaves the panel line. Now this is pretty messy. You can see there's lots of blobs there I'm leaving. That's alright, we'll come back and clean that up later. Especially given with modern day kind of model kits where they tend to have a lot of panel line detail and panel lining, this process helps bring out all that sort of detail. And in the real world, you sort of think of it in terms of where dirt and crud would sort of build up over time, and also sort of shadow areas of panels, on the edge of the panels. So that's essentially it, and I'm going to go through and do that with all the rest of the pieces, and I will leave this probably for about a day. You can do it after a couple of hours, but I tend to find that enamel paints take quite some time to dry. Now this stuff's heavily thinned down, so it's not too bad, but I tend to find that after a day or so, when I'm cleaning it off, it tends to stick in the panel lines a bit better, and it's easier to it's easier to brush off just the top messy parts of the enamel. So I'll go ahead and do the rest, and then I'll take you through the process of cleanup. I've let the panel line wash dry for, it's actually been a couple of days, but it doesn't matter with enamels, because once you use enamel thinner, or like what I do, which is use Shellite, it will actually still come off. So even though it's been on there for a couple of days, it'll be fine. So I just decant a bit of Shellite into a bottle using cotton buds. Get it wet, just dab off a bit of excess on some paper towel, and then you want to sort of brush over the panel lines. You don't want to sort of gouge out the enamel. And just take my time, work across the surface. Try and take out any of those smears that I have, that I've left behind, and clean up any overspills. You see, it comes up pretty well. Alright, so you can see that, it's all come up pretty clean. A little bit down there, I see. Alright, I apologise to those of you who've been watching any of my other videos. You've seen me do this a million times, but for any of you who sort of just, it's the first of my videos you're watching, just so that you know how I sort of go about it. So on the wing here, just doing exactly the same thing. Just wiping across the panel lines, trying not to get the cotton bud sort of in there, gouging the stuff out. And it does a really nice job giving those nice clean lines. And what I'm doing is I'm also turning the cotton bud as well, so I'm sort of trying to ensure that whenever I do a sweep across, it's a cleaner part of the cotton bud. Now this piece isn't too bad, there's not a lot of cleanup to do on it, but some of the other pieces I did, there was quite a bit of cleanup, so end up with this kind of mess. Alright, so that's the process I go through for cleaning up all the panel lines, and I'll go ahead and finish the last of the few pieces I've got to do, and then the next step will be decaling. Time for decals. I've already started on a lot of the pieces, getting the decals down, but I'll just quickly show you my process in case you haven't sort of seen it on any of my other videos. I've got the two wing decals here, and I'm going to soak them in my tray. Now it's quite cold here at the moment, so these will take a little bit to come loose off the paper. This is where using a bit of warm water helps, but that's alright. I'm not in a rush. So what I've done here is just blue tack down the pieces. That way I'm not chasing the piece around and the decal, it's just the decal I'm chasing around. I want to highlight some of the other areas of, not concern, but some areas that you need to just watch out for. One is this top piece, that yellow there is a decal, so it takes quite a bit of microsol or whatever decal solution you're using, a softener, to make it conform, because it's quite a reasonable dome there that it's covering. And if I try and get in really close, you can sort of see those wrinkles and stuff, which I'm still sort of working on. So I just do it time and time again with the microsol, and I'll put that on, and then I'll just push down gently with a cotton bud to kind of try and squeeze out some of those wrinkles. You do enough times, eventually you'll get most of them out. The other thing to watch out for are these leg pieces. Focus, there we go. Now this is actually made up of 3 decals. So there's the long black stripe, the yellow dot, and this end black bit as well. So just be careful lining all those up. It's actually quite tricky to line up. You can see it doesn't follow that panel line, which is kind of disappointing. If I try and follow that panel line, it doesn't match up with this sort of little handle or whatever it is, helicopter handle. And if I try and straighten it the other way, it doesn't match down the bottom here. So it's a little bit iffy that it's not sort of following that panel line. But at the end of the day, that's on the inside of the leg, so it's not too much of an issue. There's also some decals on the missiles, so you just need to make sure you get them sort of aligned correctly. Thankfully they are pre-cut, so they've got that gap there for where it plugs into the missile holder. What else we got? The cockpit has quite a large number of decals on it, so just be really careful and sort of do it for a bit at a time. So this anti-glare panel here, that's a decal. The black stripe that runs all the way around, that's a decal. These graphical devices along the side, decals. There's also the little warning there, the little skull and crossbones. So there's quite a bit sort of on the cockpit. The other thing that's really quite tricky is this is the canopy. So it's a little bit hard to see there, but there is actually a couple of decals that you can choose from, and I've just chosen Pilot Focker, and it is tiny, and you haven't got a lot of space there to put it in. So I've actually trimmed that decal right up to the edge, or otherwise you're going to get a bit of overlap. Now at the moment it's all masked off because I want to put a matte coat over this before I unmask it, but yeah, just be careful if you're doing the canopy decals. There's not a lot of room there to play with. Just to go in a bit more detail, the products I'm using. Microset is used first. You put that down before you put the decal down, and it reduces the surface tension, so the decal's not sort of floating around too much. It also helps to soften the decal a bit. The microsol is what you put on afterwards, and that really helps to soften the decal. It kind of melts it a bit, and it helps it conform to non-flat shapes really well. The other tools that I recommend, you sort of use like a toothpick or even a cotton bud with pointy end, just for moving the decal around. You don't want to be sort of using anything too sharp or anything in case you sort of break the decal. I love these decal tweezers. These are Tamiya tweezers, and they've got a nice, we'll focus, they've got nice sort of flat nose on them, which makes it easier for sort of picking up decals when they're sitting on a flat surface. I also just use a couple of brushes for applying the microsol. The tray I've got here, this is by Wave. It's a decal tray, and what it allows you to do is sort of pull the tray out a little bit and sort of set it out of the water, so you're not chasing a decal around. But you don't need one of those. You can do it in a saucer or even just dunk the decal in water and let it sit on your bench. It'll be fine. But I do like my tools, so I kind of spend a lot of time doing this hobby. Sometimes it's worth spending that bit of extra money to get a tool that might make your job a little bit easier. Alright, so these decals are sort of starting to come off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this one here. And so I'm going to apply some microset. Going to lather that on. Now, of course, everything all the pieces I'm putting decals on have a gloss coat. So to protect the paint. With lacquer paints it's not so bad. Lacquer paints are pretty good when you're looking at putting decals over the top and that sort of thing, but the gloss helps to give it a sort of a smooth surface. Alright, next thing I'll do is grab the decal and I'll just wick off the excess water on a bit of paper towel. And then get this lined up properly. Now I tend to find that if you hold it at one end and then pull the backing paper away, you can tend to get it, you can kind of sometimes get it lined up a bit easier. I believe the decal should sort of go right up to that point. Now next thing I'm doing is take a cotton bud and I just want to sort of squeegee out the water, the excess water that we have in there. And doing that, of course, I've knocked it out of place. Happy with that location there. So the next step is to get some microsol on it. I'm being quite generous with the microsol. This stuff is not super strong, so can be quite liberal with it. And that will help the decal sort of bed down into those panel lines. Alright, on to the next one. So again, I'll start off with microset. Then take this decal, wick off the excess water. Just hold the decal at one end and pull away the backing sheet. Just gently maneuver it into position. And then some microsol to allow the decal to bed down better. And that's pretty much the process. So I will go over these decals a couple of times with the microsol, especially the decals that have difficult shapes to conform to, like this one here. And a lot of the other ones I'll go over and do, a couple of coats of microsol, and after a while, those decals will flatten out and bed down really well. So that's my process for the decals. After I've finished decaling all the parts, the next bit will be the flat coat, and then of course the assembly. Time for final assembly. After I bedded down all the decals, I coated all the pieces in SMS flat clear, so just give it a flat coat to protect those decals. Now there's some parts of the assembly I've sort of already done just as part of the sort of painting process, like the cockpit, but we basically have sort of a control panel which sort of slots in there. And then we have the pilot, which goes in the chair. And for the pilot, I've actually left the arms unglued, and the reason for that is I can rest them. I can rest them on the control panel. So try and push him in there. There we go. Now I'm just going to dry fit everything first. I'm not sure if I need some glue. So there we go. And then of course the canopy goes over the top. Now I'm actually pretty happy with the masking of the canopy. It didn't come up too bad. And so the decals are on there and everything. I'm just going to use a cleaning cloth that you use for cleaning glasses, just to give the inside of the canopy a bit of a clean. I just noticed it looks, I think there's a bit of residual blue tack in there, or tape or something. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Alright, and then we look at the rest of the assembly. I've got to check which way these wings go. Okay, so the blue one goes that way. Alright, and then we've got this back piece. Okay, so there's a poly cap that goes into this round piece, and then that, and then this slots into here. And then out, and then that plugs into this piece here. Okay, so now I've got to line up all the right holes and pegs. And this top piece goes on. Okay. Alright, now this supposedly has the cockpit has a couple of slots. Oh, but that's tight. And then there's a poly cap that it has to fit into at the end of it. There we go. Yeah, because all the surfaces have sort of been painted, they're it's a little bit tight. Okay, on to the next part. Now this back piece, I can't remember what I did last time, whether I could actually slot this back in afterwards, these little thrusters, because I think if I put them in first, yeah, I remember I had this kind of issue last time with the Battroid version. It's just a bit tricky as to what the order is. If I set that in place, I might give these pegs a little trim. Okay, so let's have that in there first, and then drop that straight in. That's the way to do it. There we go. Okay, so we have that, and then we have this. Make sure we get it around the right way. Alright, put that to the side. I've already assembled these, so they're ready to go. Next is the head. Just to give you an idea, I've taken off the masking on the visor. It's a bit hard to see. It is green, sort of see it in real life, but the masking came up pretty well. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let's put the side mounted guns on. Now they'll have to rotate forward. Okay, already assembled the bases of the thrusters. Alright, now we have a number of little thrusters to put in here. There's sort of two bigger ones and one smaller one. I can't remember which one goes where. I think the smaller one goes in there somewhere. So what I do is get a cotton bud. Use it to press it in place. These bigger ones are a little bit easier, just because you can get a better hold of them. There we go. It's on the side there, and then we have, let's see, one of these guys. I think what I might do is cut that peg down. I remember this on the again on the Battroid version, because it all gets a little bit tight, so you need to just be careful that you don't sort of break any of the pegs right off. It's always better just to cut them down first. We have this little ball joint that supports the thruster. Okay, so it goes there. Put the thruster belt on the end. There we go. I think we can put the top and the top and the bottom piece on after we've sandwiched this in. Or can we? Let's see. Yes, we can. Look at it. Alright, and the bottom. So I have all the wave kits I've built, and I love how sharp their detail is. I just find all their corners are nice and sharp and crisp. Unlike a lot of Bandai kits where, especially the sort of Gunpla stuff, they tend to round off the corners a little bit. Alright, that's one of the booster packs done. Now for the other one. Now for the legs, they give you two options for the intakes, so whether you want the intakes open or closed. Personally, I prefer the look of them when they're closed, so that's the option I'll be doing. But it is good that they give you a choice, especially for fighter mode. So we've got this insert piece for the intake door, and then that slots in. There's these little grooves that you can see, and if I get it around the right way, they slot in like that. And it gets sandwiched together. That's that part done. Alright, I've already assembled this part because of course it had seams, so I had to sort of glue it all together and then paint it. Now the next bit is we take this guy, and again we've got these really fiddly little thrusters. So there's 3 sort of very small ones, and there's 2 larger ones. Again, I don't think I'll need to glue them in, just because they seem to be sort of fitting in there. They seem to be holding quite well without glue. Famous last words, of course. I'll pop out after saying that. It's just a matter of lining them up the right way. They do have these sort of keyed protrusions, I guess you could call them. So you just want to make sure they're around the right way. Okay. So the next step is take the undercarriage piece. First we're going to slot this in. Okay, like that. And then that slots into this side of the leg. We've got a poly cap here. Okay, bit I'm not really looking forward to, which is this rear thruster. The rear thruster sort of slots in there reasonably well, but then there's this slot here and these kind of corresponding pegs, and they have to kind of sit in there. This is where I get cotton bud to sort of force it in there. And you kind of got to match them up on the other side, so this is where it gets a little bit fiddly. Just gently sort of squeezing it, making sure there's no resistance, that everything sort of slots in. And that one actually went in a lot easier than the previous one. I thought I'd do the other leg before I did this one, just to make sure I knew what I was doing. This one is played ball. Alright. Okay, and now we take this piece and that slots into the poly cap. Ooh, it's tight. Yeah, everything gets a layer of paint, and all the tolerances kind of get a lot narrower. We have the intake, slots on there, And there we have the legs. Now, like I said, I've already done the other one, so they're both ready to go. Okay, on to the weaponry. So we have, well, actually technically I think these are the arms with the missile packs on them. So we've got the tub, there's this piece that slots in on the end, and then we put, let's see, get this around the right way. And we've got a lid. Okay, so there's that, and then there's this bit which I've just already put together while I was painting it, so I didn't get paint in the pegs. I can just push that down into place now. A bit of blue tack still in there. I've got to say it has made a difference using blue tack to block up all the pegs and the holes. It has made it somewhat easier to get all these pieces together. Alright, and then we have the missiles that go in the end here. And then we flip it over, make sure we've got it around the right way, and push it down there. Yeah, so this is the arms sort of all folded up with the missile packs on them. Okay, then we've got the gun. Now, of course, the gun comes in two halves, but I've already sort of stuck it together so I can deal with the seam, but it has a nozzle that goes on the end, so that's come up pretty well. Okay, these missile packs, I've already sort of put them together just because, you know, I had to deal with the seams, and then I put the decals on them and gave it all sort of a matte coat as one unit, but you can see how they came up. They come up pretty well. So there's the two of those, and then we have these guys, which is, we have a piece that slots in here, and then the front part slots in, like so. Now you can see the holes here for all the front ends of the missiles, which is really nice. I really like that. I just wish I'd done the same thing with the other end. So the tails of the missiles were a little bit trickier to paint, so I ended up painting them with enamel. But anyway, so I've got this little tray full of these things. It is nice that we can actually paint these separately. They do seem to be holding in there alright. It's not like they're falling out, so I probably won't need to glue them. Cool, yeah, cool, yeah, cool. Alright, now we start getting all this stuff on here. Alright, so let's bring in the big guy, fold the wings back. So there's this little adapter piece which sort of slots on the back of the fuselage here. Like so. And that holds this piece, which has both of the fast packs on it. So I need to, it's interesting in the instructions, I don't show it with the stabilizers on it. Okay. pin that supposedly clips on here somewhere. Alright, then on the underside, I probably should have done this first. Yikes. Now they've got this piece. Okay, so this all joins to the legs first. Just double checking. Yep. Those holes are tight. So I'm just using the peg itself just to sort of work the hole a little bit, just so it's going to fit a little bit better. There we go. Alright, now this is all supposed to connect under the body. There are a lot of holes that it has to match up to. Again, I might take the top pack off first. There are a lot of points where this has to, where the pegs have to match holes, so there's quite a bit going on and it's all a bit tough. But I think we're there. Okay, that's good. Tell you what, I think if I was using water-based acrylics, a bit of strife here, because there's you're going to have a lot more paint scratching off. Alright, what have we got? Let's put the head in while we're underneath. All that work I did on the visor, you don't even see it. Oh, and then of course the gun goes underneath, so that sort of slots in here. Now let's put all these missiles in. Now it is good, these are just sort of basic round pegs, round holes, so you can actually pivot, because of course as you change the wings, you may want to pivot the missiles a little bit. So it is good that they're just on a round peg. Alright, let's see if we can get this back on. There we go. Now with the gun on the bottom, I'm going to actually be interested to see if the when I put the landing gear in, whether that actually works or not, because that's got a long way to come down before it's stable. I suspect that we might have to take the gun off to have the landing gear down. Okay, all right. Okay, so onto the landing gear and the stand. For the transformation into Gerwalk mode, I've already started some of the disassembly just because it was a little bit tough. So just to explain what I've done, first of all, probably the most obvious bit is I've taken the legs off the fighter. So this, if you remember, when I was putting it together, it was all quite tight and it was quite problematic to work it, to get it off. So anyway, thankfully I haven't broken anything in the process. The other thing that I've done is put the closed doors for the landing gear. So I'll put them on the legs and also the one sort of under the nose there. Because obviously when it's in Gerwalk mode, it's not going to have the undercarriage deployed. So I'm taking the legs off. I've also taken the backpack off just to make life a bit easier. And what else? I've taken out this middle section here because these three components, some of them are required for the transformation. Now let's have a quick look at the way this works. So essentially the instructions here are talking about the pieces to remove from the fighter. So we've got the legs unit, we've got the intakes, so I need to take those off. If I remember rightly, they're held in place by a poly cap. So I can just wiggle those off. There is a little bit of paint coming off, but I suspect that's just coming from the paint that's on the poly cap. Okay, so we've got the two intakes. I've got these components here, I've already sort of taken them off. Now if we look at the Battroid kit, so I've got that here. I've already taken his arms off, so they're just taken off at the ball joint there. Actually, having a look at it, I think, yes, we actually need to take this component out now. That's going to be interesting. Yeah, it just pops out. Okay, so we'll take those out. So all we need is just the socket. Okay, so we've got two arms. We also need to take the legs and the kneecaps off from the Battroid version. So do this without breaking anything or scratching paint. Ooh. Okay, so we have two leg units, and I've just noticed you can actually take them off at the intake at the top there. So I need to take these ones off, and that would have been a lot easier. Alright, so what I'll do is I'll put that back on. Follow the instructions, Ben. Follow the instructions. Makes life a lot easier. Alright. Okay, so we've got the two legs. We need to take off the kneecaps. If I remember rightly, these are held in place by a poly cap. It's a bit tricky to sort of maneuver out. It's, he's coming out. There we go. Just needs a lot of finagling. So just a word of advice, if you're thinking of sort of putting these kits together and transforming them into the Gerwalk mode, I suggest you do it once because it's proving quite awkward to to sort of pull apart. And obviously it's not made to, it's not made to be pulled apart and put back together multiple times. Alright, okay, we've finally got the legs ready to go. Okay. Alright, now for the underside of the fighter, we need to take this part, which actually came with the Battroid kit, and we need to put that in a particular way. And then we take this bit, which I've got to say was a nightmare to pull out of here. Undo. But essentially, this is what helps keep this in place. Alright, so we have the shoulders in place. Then you put the arms on by the looks of it. Okay. I don't know, I'm thinking I might go against the instructions and do the legs first. I reckon they're going to be harder to get on. Okay, I've come across a problem which I've not come across before, and this is to do with the way polycaps are sort of fitting into pieces. There's this little assembly here which is basically made up from parts from the Battroid kit, and you can see here it's what joins the leg of the Battroid to the intake for the Gerwalk mode. But if I show this one, show what's happening, you can see it wriggles around quite a bit. I don't know if that's sort of coming up on screen particularly well, but that's shocking. That is really bad. And I've double checked that I've got the right polycaps in there. And the only thing I can sort of, the thing that I've worked out is that I actually need to put some shims in here to prevent the polycap from moving around inside the cylindrical piece. So I'll just quickly show you how I've gone about that. But when you, let's see if we can focus on this. It's probably not going to be light enough. But you can actually see it, that the polycap has some give, like it has some rotational give, but it also has a bit of vertical give as well. So I need to, first of all, I'm taking some, I think this is 0.1 mil styrene, and I'm going to cut a very thin strip, and this is going to make up the shims to prevent the rotational movement of the polycap. Now, I know this is not going to fix it completely, but it has made a difference. So, what I could do is get the shim, try and wedge it in the side there. There we go. So, can you see? So it's just sort of between the slot in the cylindrical piece and the polycap key. So I can trim that. Never come across this before in any kit I've built. It's quite bizarre. It's almost like the polycap shrunk or something. So I don't know if that's maybe the way I've been keeping the kit, or whether it was just a bad press of that particular sprue. I didn't have any issues with the other polycaps, so. Alright, now I need to get shim in on the other side as well. Okay, so I've got one on the other side now. And the other thing is I want to put a shim across the top here, and for that I'm going to use 0.5 mil styrene. So I just need to get the 0.5 stuff, which is a bit thicker, to cut it down a little bit. I'll be able to set all this in with styrene cement. So yeah, so what I've got is just the piece across there, and now I'm going to close it up and clamp it together. Oh, my shim just fell out. Okay, hopefully that holds in place a little bit better. So let's give this one a test. Yeah, that's a lot firmer now. That's good. Back to business. Right, so the intake, push that on. That's one lead done. This other one on. Okay, so I think we've done all that. Now it's just a matter of sticking the legs on, and we're done by the look of it. Okay, so I am not particularly confident about getting these holes here. In fact, I think it's going to be easier to do it without the legs attached. Yeah, let's do that. Alrighty, slide that on. Slide that on. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to get the center of gravity right. Let's see, okay, let's get the arms on. And the all important fast pack on the back. It'll kind of stand, but it looks a bit rubbish. So I got it to stand, but that's not really the classic pose, is it? It's sort of a bit, it's always about the nose pointing down. So I may have to tweak it a bit. This one's a bit tricky. But that is pretty much the transformation. So I'll get some, we'll go on to the glamour shots next, and I'll sort of show the both the fighter mode and once it's converted to Gerwalk mode. Just quickly, I want to highlight that there are a huge number of pieces left over in this fighter kit. So you get a massive number of polycaps left over. Let's see what else we got here. There's quite a number of the white pieces sort of left over in this kit, so plenty of good stuff for, you know, if you're into scratch building or, you know, you need some spare parts. But there's plenty of bits left over in this kit. I mean, look at these screws. We've got all these missiles. We've got leg pieces. Yeah, so there's quite a few bits left over. Okay, so just some sort of final thoughts on the kit. The fighter kit itself is gorgeous, really nicely detailed, and the decals are great, except the black and yellow areas. You probably want to paint them rather than using the decals. Again, I think it's a bit of a shame you have to buy the two kits to sort of transform it into the Gerwalk mode, but nonetheless, that's the way it is. And of course, that's the way I sort of want to display it. That's what I wanted all along. So on to the glamour shots, and until the next video, I'll catch you later.